Hello and welcome to today's video. This time we'll be taking a first look through my collection of vintage and not quite so vintage Folio Society hardbacks. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Okay then, so I have been collecting Folio Society books on and off for, well, many years, and I've had some, I've let some go, but recently I have been very much impressed reading up online about the very early Folio Society books, the real vintage ones, and although I'm not a Folio Society expert, I have been enjoying reading up about the particular society and the publisher itself. This one's quite nice. So they started in 1947, and I've got to admit, it is the really early ones that I guess I'm most interested in. This is a beautiful one. Now, a lot of my Folio Society books I've picked up dirt cheap, simply because they're just too good. They're too nice, the books, to leave behind. This one I picked up because it was Patrick Leigh Fermor, and I think I paid £3 for it. Unknowingly, I didn't spot at the time that it had a stain on the front, which I am a little disappointed about, I have to say. And I don't think there's anything I can do to clean it up. It does look like it is an actual stain of some sort into the cloth, which is a bit of a shame. I've got my toothbrush with me today, just to do a bit of targeting, because the good thing with Folio Society books, they're so beautifully well made that they're Smith sewn is what they're called, so they're actually sewn and not glued. So I use the toothbrush to get into the bit where they're sewn in, and then my normal brush for that. However, because in a lot of cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases the books are in slipcases, they're not going to be dusty. That's the great thing. So the top of the boxes might be dusty and a bit grubby, but that generally has saved the book. So anyway, I'm going to go through my collection. I must have about 20 to 25 Folio Society books, maybe a few more. I love this sort of stuff, and I always keep this with the book. So this was the original person, like Mr. Manners, from 20th of April 1999, and paying by direct debit. It doesn't actually say how much it costs, but not that it matters. But that's a little bit of the book's history, and it's very specific for this book, so I'd like to sort of keep it with it, really, you know. But that's nice. Apart from that little stain, it is a great book. If you've never read Patrick Leigh Fermor, he is recommended. It is travel writing. This is not fiction, this is non-fiction, and it's worth pointing out that the Folio Society publish both. It's not just books of fiction, they do all sorts, including, as we'll see, some beautiful illustrated books. Now, this was a real favourite of mine, and I've had it for quite some time. I hadn't realised until I started looking at it properly that this is actually a reprint, but it's on the Bayeux Tapestry. So what I'm doing is just blowing any dust that might be in the bottom there, but there we are. Really quite a beautiful one. It came out in the 1960s, I believe, originally, and this is the reprint. If we just have a little look inside, it says 1973. I'm sure mine is a reprinted one. Yeah, look, second impression, same year, but second impression. Now, me being a collector, I originally bought these books, and this is an absolute beauty, simply because of the quality of the books. I wasn't too fussed about them, and in fact my mum used to be in the Folio Society, and she gave me some of her books as gifts, and they weren't all first prints, some of them were reprints. But I am a collector, and you know, reprints are not my thing, as you can imagine. You know, I prefer to have books as first printings if possible, but I'm not going to get rid of this. I'm going to keep this one here until a first print should come my way, basically. Now, looking at the slipcase on this, that side is much lighter than that side, so it's probably been stood up with the lighter side up front. But it doesn't really matter with these slipcases. In a lot of cases, it doesn't matter. One thing that is a little bit annoying is sometimes the spines read the wrong way round, if that makes sense. So depending on how you want it, I would probably prefer it to have the title from top to bottom, but in actual fact, you're supposed to have them housed with the publisher's colophon, the Folio Society, at the bottom, in which case that one needs to go, in effect, the wrong way round. Also worth noting, you can see here, because of this black, that there's like slight bleeding there, and that's because when the book is in the slipcase like that, it's somehow caught a little bit of sun and it's just bled into the book. So if you take it away, so this would have all been covered up, so just the edge there, some sunlight has crept in there, and that just shows, particularly with these like maroon coloured books, how easy it is for books to get damage like that, you know, absolutely. So anyway, that's okay. Now this next one's a more modern one. As I said, we've got really early ones right back to the early days of the Society. So this one was pretty much mint, as I recall, but once again it's a reprint. So one of the things I remember my mum saying, which is why she ended up giving me some of her spares, was that the if you joined the Society, one of the prerequisites, it's not anymore, but back in the day it was, one of the prerequisites was that you had to buy 4 books per calendar year, and then you got 1 book for free. That was like the rule of being in the Society. You find that the books that were given away for free are the most common books, and they turn up time and time again in collections and job lots on places like eBay. So this one first was published in 1999. This edition is a second print from 2000. But you see this book, it's around, it turns up often, and you will see probably 20 to 30 books that are like that, where they just turn up again and again and again. And I have got some of those in my collection here today, but I don't mind. Yeah, nice jacket on that one. It almost looks like, yeah, it's like a banknote, isn't it? A folded banknote. I've not read a lot of Mark Twain, but what I've read, I've really enjoyed. And he is one of those great American writers. He's simple as that. Now, one of my favourites is this chap, old Charles Dickens, who I really do enjoy. Once again, I believe this is one of those ones that was given away as a reward for taking 4 titles over the course of the year. And this copy, well, as you can see, it's got something on the top there. It looks like chalk or something, doesn't it? I don't think there's anything we're going to be able to do with it. Just putting a little bit of a dab on there just to see if that does anything. I don't think it will. Yeah, it's one of those things where even if we put the rubber on it, I don't think it's going to make any difference. It's like it's been sploshed with a tiny... I'll tell you what that's come from. Someone has had this on a shelf that has been painted. It's been painted like white, and it's been popped on there. And even though the gloss paint might be dry, over time, the big heavy book has sat on it, and a little bit of the paint has just rubbed off onto the bottom of the box there. That is what's happened with that one. However, once again, I'm not too worried, because I believe this is also a reprint. Beautiful book. Yeah, so it's a nice little book, this, but with the date and the price written inside. Basically, what's happened, as I've decided to get into this is a Folio Society bookmark. They actually came with them. As I decided to start picking up these early folio books, the cheapest way to do it is by buying job lots online, and that's what I've been doing. But you get the odd. You're going to have to accept that you're going to get the odd book which is a reprint, and/or you're going to have that little bit of damage on like that. So this one here, Dickens' London, came out in 1966. This is the 4th impression, so very, very popular, from 1972. So yeah, so evidently this was one that was kept in print, and I suspect, once again, without checking, because I have got reprints, I've got PDFs of all the catalogues, not quite all, but 99% of all the catalogues that the Folio Society put out over the years. And it tells you which books were sort of ones that you could get if you bought 4 books in the year, you know. One of the other, I think this has been read, but it's been kept, because it's been in the slipcase, it has looked after it. One of the interesting things about the Folio Society is that they were created by Alan Bott. Now, you may not know the name Alan Bott, but he was the chap who created Pan Books. He was the founder of Pan Books. Now, this one is, well, we got here, Robert Louis Catriona. I don't think this was one of those ones that was given away. I think this was just one of the books that people could choose as part of their subscription. And I got to admit, I don't think, because the boxes aren't glossy, I don't think there's a really easy way to actually clean them. I mean, even, you know, you do see them. So this one here, that almost looks there as if it's had a bit of sellotape around the edges, just a little bit at each end, but it's hard to tell. It is hard to tell. But a little bit of wear, but I don't mind that. I mean, these are some of these books, you know, potentially are going to be, well, fast approaching 80 years old now. So when you're picking them up, I kid you not, some of the books I've got here have cost me £1.50 each. So they're just incredible value for money. And I'm not going to be too annoyed if they're not perfect, because I know, particularly with the common ones, I'll easily be able to upgrade them over time. There we are. The biggest issue with collecting folio books for me is going to be the space. Where am I going to put them? And I have been giving that some thought. So this has got an ex-library inside, but it's got a Folio Society ex-libris one. So this is one of the ones you could buy from the Folio Society. It's got a little £6 in the corner. Yeah, so space is obviously going to be a problem. You know, with ask any book collector, they always say, yeah, well, space is the issue. But I have actually got a solution. So at the moment, I've got my Winston Churchill book collection out, which is 2 shelves of hardbacks. And above that, I've got another 2 shelves of Hutchinson Books of the Century, which are another series of hardbacks, which I've recently finished off videoing all the Churchill books. I did one on my main channel on the Second World War. That's now been done. Yeah, that's a nice book there. Yeah, I did one on the Second World War, Churchill's Second World War. So I've done all that, and I've already done the First World War. So apart from a few odd bits and pieces, which I'm not really going to bother filming, my Churchill collection theoretically could now be boxed up, ready for when I move house in a couple of years. So that's basically what I'm going to do. And those 2 shelves, for now, will be more than adequate to house all these folio books. Now, this is a book which came in a job lot, and it's one I actually considered buying separately because I really like the short stories of O. Henry. He's probably one of the most famous short story writers there ever was. I don't think this one is particularly scarce, but the box is absolutely hammered. It's the worst book in my collection. But I'd almost be tempted to say, look, don't even bother keeping it in the box, but I will. But I'm not too worried about this one being in such low shape, because I'm confident another copy is going to come along my way. And yeah, O. Henry, he was just absolutely famous for the short story. He was a master, and he wrote it was his bread and butter. He wrote over 200 in his career. And there are many, many anthologies, including real vintage anthologies of his work. But I thought this one was a particularly nice one. There we are. And yeah, the illustrations by Paul Hogarth, who I really like as well. Very, very recognisable. Obviously, this is a grubby old copy, this one. You know, I'm not going to lie. The box was tatty. The book itself is worn, probably because the stories are so good. And for the first time today, we're actually seeing some dust coming off the book itself, probably because the box set is so worn out, possibly. But the boards are okay. I mean, they're a little bit worn, but it's okay. I suspect I won't have to wait too much longer to get a nice copy of that one. There we are. But yeah, he's a bit of a beaten up one, that. Bit of a beaten up example, but not the end of the world, you know. And this next one is one of the ones my mum gave me, Tales of the Unexpected. Once again, sadly, a reprint, but she did keep it in pretty nice condition. She said she did read this one. I really like Roald Dahl. And obviously he did a range of, he wasn't just famous for his children's books, he did a whole range of adult books. And the 2 volumes of Tales of the Unexpected combined into this like omnibus edition, I think it's really, really handsome, this one. And even though this is a second print, it seems to go for pretty good money, about 20 to 25 pounds, this one, for like a really nice condition one. But as I said, my copy is a reprint, but I'm not worried too much. So look, Complete Tales of the Unexpected and Other Stories. So it's got Kiss Kiss, Over to You, Switch Picks, Someone Like You, which were all individual books, and 8 further Tales of the Unexpected. Pretty good, eh? So there's Kiss Kiss, yeah, Over to You, Switch Picks. Yeah, good stuff. Illustrated throughout. Got about a dozen illustrations there. And it's one of those real huge ones. Yeah, I'm not sure how much of it my mum has read. I read most of these. Yes, I remember enjoying the Tales of the Unexpected TV show, although quite dated nowadays. But yeah, really, really nice edition, that one. And the slipcase is really clean as well. So I don't think that needs much into it. I am going to just do it in a little bit there. And interestingly, the where it's been opened, the Smith sewn bit has sort of gone in a little bit. So that's interesting. Just I'm learning about these and how they handle over time, literally as we're cleaning them. But I really, really have enjoyed educating myself about the Folio Society. And one of the best ways to do that is with the many bibliographies that they've done. So here's one. I've got a couple to show you today. This is Folio 21. And I think this was the first time they did a bibliography. So let's wipe the edges off first of all. So this was 1947 to 1968. It's quite the tome, but it's also fantastic. Now there are many bibliographies. There's one for the 25th, then they did one for 40 years, one for 34, one for 40, which is smaller. Then there's a 50th, which is very good and also very cheap. And the last one in this style that they did was the 60th. I've got the 50th to show you today. The 60th is actually one is like my working copy, as it were, because that's the most comprehensive one. Although the society itself is now 78 years old. So really, for the 70th, they did publish a bibliography, but it was just online, and it was just the titles, really, and the dates. These ones here, which were done in book form, have all got different and unique introductions and essays on the Folio Society and its history. This one's really nice because a lot of it is written by a guy called Charles Eady. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And he was one of the sort of founders of the Folio Society. So, yes, 1968, but it covers the period 47 to 67. It's got a little errata slip. And it's surprising, but these bibliographies are really easy to get. They're not expensive at all. And it's a great way as an introduction to get to know the Society. As I said, all of these introductions are unique to the different volumes, the different bibliographies. So I recommend them. And then there's the complete list up to that point with illustrations. Not so many book jackets. It's more, what was contained within. I mean, there's a few there, the different bindings. Don't forget, for the first 10 years, the Folio Society all the books had dust wrappers rather than slipcases. Different examples of the bindings and things like that. Obviously, they did many sort of slipcases and series. And, you can collect Dickens, for example. There's 3 different Dickens series. So this is a really nice year-by-year sort of look at the books that were published early on. Nice colour bits here. They're beautiful, really, aren't they? Their Shakespeare's are really something else, and I'm not really into Shakespeare, but the books themselves are just beautiful to look at. Anyway, we could be here all day, and I'm cleaning these. This isn't my look at vintage Folio Society books or collecting them, because that video will be coming on my main channel. But I couldn't do that video until I'd given these a bit of a clean. So back into the slipcase it goes. But yeah, that's the very earliest sort of guide to the series. Next, we've got this one, which is another one which I half suspect, although I haven't checked, might have been one of those ones that was given away as a freebie if you subscribe to the Society. Travels of a Victorian Photographer. Now, this one isn't actually in a cloth slipcase, it's card. So if this was grubby, we could theoretically go on there and clean it, but we don't need to. That one's absolutely fine. And underneath, the book seems, once again, in very, very nice condition. It's like a little compilation, I suspect, pulled from several sources. I think it's the Francis Firth? Yeah, the photographs from the Francis Firth archive. Now, he went round, Francis Firth, and photographed most of Great Britain, and it's basically an area by area, and in fact it's county by county, with the very best of what he photographed. Yeah, this one was quite a late one for me. I think it's like 2001, is it? Yeah, 2001. So I've only got a smattering of folio books past the year 2000. Most of mine are in this earlier period. But anyway, this is one which just came in a collection. It's a nice book. I'll probably dip in and out of that at some point. But to me, it looks absolutely minters. So can't complain at that. From a new book to one that is quite an early one. It's the first one we've seen today in a dust wrapper. It's Flanders, which, if you've never read it, is an absolutely excellent book, and one that I would sort of definitely recommend. This one is in its wrapper, which we'll have a closer look at in a minute. But it does look as if the wrapper it's a protected wrapper. So I think they call it Brodart, which is not my favourite. I don't like Brodart dust wrappers, and I think this one, the wrapper itself, has got dusty and dirty. But the thing is, with Folio Society dust wrappers, they're incredibly fragile. The paper, don't forget, when these were printed, in a lot of cases there was still some paper rationing problems in the UK, so the dust wrappers themselves were very much an extravagance. But I think we're going to take that one out, and I'm just going to be very careful with it, and I might re-wrap it. I think that's probably the best thing to do with that one. Obviously this hasn't been in a slipcase, so it's got storage dust, as you might expect. Absolutely as normal, this. But yeah, this is quite an early one. Don't think it's got any internal markings, but we'll have a look. Yeah, 1954, so this was the 7th year of the Folio Society. It hadn't been around too long. Illustrated, that's actually the full title. That's actually the full title, if you can believe it. But forever known as Multi Flanders. And a little bit racy for its day, of course, Yeah, it's just got some foxing and stuff in it. I can't do anything about that, sadly. But it's not too bad a copy. Now, I could, obviously, I'd be absolutely fine with a copy like that on the shelf. There are some Folio Society books from this period that are just so expensive, I'm not going to be able to afford them in a dust wrapper. They're just £40-50 a book. That's a bit more than I want to spend on a Folio Society book. But if there's like 3 or 4 books, like in this first year, in 1947, they published 4 books. 3 of them, I've got one of them, but 3 of them are quite reasonably priced. There's a Shakespeare one which doesn't seem to turn up very often, and if it does turn up, I might have to go for one outside of a wrapper, just to sort of fill the void, as it were. But I don't mind. Now let's slide this one out, because as I said, I'm really not a fan of Brodart. Yeah, get him out of this as carefully as we can. There we are. Right, we've done it. So now that it's come out the wrapper, we can see by the looks of it, it's already had some amateur repair done on it, which you'd never know until you got it out of the wrapper. But you can see the quality of the dust wrapper paper. I mean, it's actually slightly better than I was expecting, but it's exactly the same as the early book club edition hardbacks. Very, very similar. And of course, the bright pink, mega susceptible to the sun. But it is what it is. So what I'm going to do for now, I'm going to put the book back on it. And then when I next have a little session where I cover some of my recent hardbacks with plastic wrap, which I've got, I shall make sure that this particularly delicate wrapper is included in there. But that, to me, is far better than what it was when it was covered in that really awful Brodart one. But it is, at the moment, I would say, vulnerable. And we don't want that to have any more damage to it. So from the old to something supremely gorgeous and new. Look at this, the Multi Falcon. So this is another one which is quite modern. I think it's 2000, something like that. This is one that I bought myself. I really love the Multi Falcon as a story, and I think the Folio Society edition is a particularly nice one. Once again, it has got a tiny bit of wear onto the case there, which is a little unfortunate. It's not mint, but it's not bad. It has got a little, what I would call shelf wear. I wouldn't say it's definitely been read, but I suspect it might have been read, possibly. It's just a couple of little marks on it. But it's got an introduction by Sarah Protetsky, and it's got some illustrations throughout in a particular style, which I don't mind. It's not very comic bookish. And I think the packaging is really good, and it is a classic. It is a classic. There we are. Yes, Sarah Paretsky. She's a crime author in her own right. David Eccles did the introduction. And yeah, I think they've done a good job on that one. I think they have. It's not a particularly long book, but the styling on it is beautiful. And nice illustrated case as well. There's the artwork, and there's the... I mean, you could almost put that up on... stand it up as you know, on your bookcase. It's a real piece, that one. Yeah, very, very nice indeed. Okay, so quite a small little folio book here now. This is Philip Sidney, Astropel and Stella. And I've done, certainly in the early days, there was more sort of smaller Folio Society books than there are nowadays. They all seem to be traditional sort of hardback size. And this one's just plain, come on, a little hard to get. There we are. And this gives you, these early ones, you can see the cardboard. I mean, it's a slipcase, but it doesn't take a lot, I don't think, for these to sort of fall to bits. So it's worth bearing that in mind. And it's probably why, you know, these books are very common outside of their slipcase. But this is really, it's got such a beautiful feel in the hand. These are truly, particularly for their time, beautiful books. They really are. Absolutely gorgeous. See, this is poetry, and you know, although I don't really collect poetry, I've got, you know, I've got poetry books in my collection. In 1959, by the looks of it, yeah, there we are. And that had £4.80 inside. Right? As I said, when I haven't paid anything like that for these. They've worked out about £2 a book. I mean, just incredible, really. Not all of them, of course. Obviously, some of them were freebies, but the ones that I have bought, I bought really cheap in like spectacular job lots online, where you do see someone's been a member of the society for, you know, 3 to 5 years, something like that. Decided they can't really afford the space, or they're not really reading the books, and they decide just to stick them all up in a job lot. And there's multiple ones of that. If you type in job lot Folio Society on eBay, you'll get back, you know, several hundred results. And these are the sorts of books also that turn up on places like Facebook Marketplace, where someone's maybe inherited a load and they're not really sure what to do with it, and they just put, load of hardback books, or sometimes they'll say Folio Society, and offers sort of thing, But that's an absolute beauty. What was it? 1959. So a really nice early one in a very diddy little slipcase like that. But he's all right, isn't he? It's all right, that. Yeah, the book sort of, even though it's in the slipcase, it only goes up to the edge there. It doesn't go all the way in like some of them do. But I'm confident that is the right slipcase for it. Here's another early one here. Very, very similar sort of format, really, except it's in black leather rather than the red. Oh, they say they call that quarter leather bound, don't they? So once again, this to me almost seems like it's had something around the bottom and the top. Like maybe, in fact, that actually, can I feel that? No, but it looks as if there's been tape put on those edges, but it's been removed. Maybe it got old and it dropped off. I see it's got a little £5 on the edge there. I suspect that was the second-hand bookshop price. We won't rub that off until we've got the book back inside. Now, just on the cloth here, I can see there's a little mark which the brush got off. So the texture of this, it is cloth. It's a bit like the recent Penguin Clothbound classics. And I'm sure you're aware of what they're like. I've done some videos on my main channel about the Clothbound classics. And I've got to admit, after comparing the two, the Clothbound classics with Charles Dickens, which we'll have a look at in a minute, comparing those to the Folio Society ones, I think I prefer the Folio Society books. So I am actually tempted to move on my Penguin Clothbound classics. I've sort of fallen out of love with them. And much as I think they're beautifully designed books, once you open the covers, it goes rapidly downhill, because Penguin have been a bit lazy with regards the content, and they've just reprinted like standard black Penguin classics rather than taking that time to maybe do a new introduction, which the Folio Society always would do. So yeah, this is an early one here. Is that 1965? I think that is. Or is it even 75? No, yes, 75. Yeah, 2x5. So it looks like an early one, but it's actually from 1975. Amazing. It may even be a Folio Society reissue. I don't know. They did republish some books, like I said, like the Charles Dickens, for example, have been printed 3 times, I think, in Folio Society history. Now, this is evidently an early one. In fact, it does say 1958 because it's in a dust wrapper. But I thought I read that after 1958, no, I'll tell you what it was. 47 to 57, all the books were in dust wrappers. From 58 onwards, they started putting books in dust wrappers, but not all books. So this is one of those ones which hasn't been put in a dust wrapper, even though at the time some books were starting to be put into dust wrapper. So this is really interesting. So this has got Durafold, it says. That's the brand. And in actual fact, this particular one is very, very similar to how my books look when I've done them, and I think this is a much better job. So I'm not going to bother redoing this one, because it's in the job that's been done on it is good, and I suspect it's probably come from a professional bookseller. Oh, and I've just remembered, was it this one? Yeah, we had £5 to rub out, so thankfully it was at the top of the pile still. I'm always a little bit weary about rubbing on a board like this. But the thing is, because we've got the book inside underneath, there's no chance of the box itself getting too damaged. There we are. So that's fine. Okay. Right, where were we? Oh yes, back to this one. So I can see there's some muck and stuff along the bottom, but so before I even open it, and even some dust along there, of course it's not in a dust wrapper. in a slipcase rather. And I just do the top edges. Look at that, that's got some dust of some sort on the bottom there. Let's get the proper brush in. So it didn't need a lot, but it did have some period dirt. So we know this is from 1958. Look at that, £8 inside. As I said, I didn't pay that. The good thing is, and I think it's a bit of a secret in the world of book collecting, that these early Folio Society books are absolutely beautiful, but the focus is all on the modern Folio Society books, stuff from about 2010 onwards, where they really started hitting it out of the park with their beautiful limited editions and their signed editions of much more modern books. They started publishing like loads of science fiction and things like that, and that really, I believe, saved the Folio Society. It's actually employee owned, I believe, nowadays. So the people who work there are the owners of it, and they do very, very well indeed. They like sign Stephen King's and things like that. It's super limited editions. That is beyond the scope of what I'm looking to collect. I mean, that's for, real hardcore. I just think there's so much value in books like this, which are potentially 60 to 70 years old, and that I think is that is bloody gorgeous. So there you go. Just a very, very nice book, and in tip-top shape. Absolutely tip-top shape. That's very, very nice indeed. I'm really, really pleased with that one. We've got this little run of earlier books here at the moment that we're doing. So this one here is another beauty. This is one of the very first 4 books that the Folio Society launched. They're not numbered or anything like that, but this is from 1947, and it is from that original period. Now this one did have a wrapper, but the wrapper was like plastic. They call it glassine, is how they describe it. A glassine wrapper, and evidently the wrapper is often missing, or it's present but it's absolutely fallen to bits. This one, considering it hasn't got a wrapper, is in incredibly great condition. In all honesty, it's hardly any marks on it, but as you can see, it's a supremely thin book. It was published just after the war, so in the UK, paper rationing at this time was still a thing. I mean, it just was. Paper rationing was still going on, and consequently they couldn't be too lavish, but they were lavish enough. And we're getting the dust out of these really easily here. Let's have a little look inside. Yeah. The other thing with the Folio Society, of course, then the books aren't uniform in size. You've got small ones, got these large ones. They're all over the place just to suit the particular content. There we are, at Folio Society 1947. Once again, it's one of the poetry ones. Yeah, designed by Charles Eady, and I believe he became like one of the directors. But certainly he was intimately involved with the Society for many years, and he was the one who wrote the bibliography for that first one we saw, Folio 21. So there we are. It's an absolutely exquisite book, that. Now, I do want to get a more vigorous brush in there now, because the edges are dusty. They're more flocks than anything else, but they're much better now that we've done that. It's not doing the book any harm at all. There's no dust wrapper to get damaged. It is just taking off that initial layer. But yeah, very, very interesting design in that one. Beautifully thin book, and that is my earliest Folio Society book. So very, very nice, that. Right, another early one, and this is The Prisoner of Zenda. This is a famous book, isn't it? Now it's also got this one's got £7.50 on the case. So we'll get that off. There we are. Now, got a damaged slipcase. We can see that. What's the 750 on the other side as well. I don't think I want to try and repair the slipcase, but I am going to need to be careful getting the book in and out. But storage wise it should be okay, because they're just all going to be stood up uniform in date order is how I'm going to display mine, except the ones which form part of a series, and we'll show one of those in the next book. Yeah, so quite the damage there, as you can see. But underneath, the slipcase has done its job and it's protected the book. That's still quite a handsome addition. That's beautiful to hold. For me, that's just the right sort of size. So, I've got 750 inside again. 1961, this one. And illustrations by Biro, who I know from, once again, from Pan, because he did some Pan jackets. Now, I need to put something under there, so I'm going to grab this next one so that I can lean that page against it, so I can safely get this £7.50 out. Got 3 places the book was priced up. Can you believe it? There we are. Okay. I can go back there. Well, if they've priced it up again, I just won't believe it. Right, let's have a flick through. I've been loving reading a website devoted to Folio Society books. It's called Library Thing. It's a great resource for all things folio. Certainly one of the more modern ones that's just been published is Neuromancer by William Gibson, which is a book I read when it came out, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. And the Folio Society edition is beautiful. So anyway, that one needs to go that way round so that I'm not putting any additional pressure on the loose top. But underneath, it's a beautiful book. It's absolutely beautiful. I think you will agree. Right, next is another one of the bibliographies. This is Folio 50. Now, this is probably the cheapest one to get. And if you're only interested in the really early years of the Folio Society, you know, maybe you'll be absolutely fine with this one. It's got a really nice illustrated slipcase. Do you know what this one cost me? It was like £6, including postage. It was from one of those places like, you know, Any Amount of Books or We Buy Books Online. You know, one of those places. I don't think there's a mark on it. And I haven't checked, but I'm wondering if these bibliographies were sort of thing that were given out as the free book that year, maybe, you know. But once again, it's worth getting all the different bibliographies because they've all got different sorts of features inside them, you know, different articles and what have you. This one's got ones by Sue Bradbury, Robertson Davies there, Quentin Blake, Paul Nash. Yeah, 1997. And this is for the first 50 years. And these are the different articles there. And it's a heavy old tome compared to the earlier one, the 21 years one that we looked at. And although they don't show every cover, as I said, that sort of information is around online. As a bibliography with information, it's great. Really, really comprehensive. So you get to see, you may spot books that you just didn't know the Folio Society even published, you know. Examples of some of their nice books. And the series are beautiful, aren't they? I'd love to get some of this stuff, like some of these box sets, the Sherlock Holmes sets, things like that. They're just gorgeous. Very, very nice indeed. The Beryl Cook there, look, she did a series of books. Mr. Norris Changes Trains, yeah, which I've got in Penguin, but that's great. I love Beryl Cook's style. But she illustrated a few books for the Folio Society. And it is, I mean, you know, you could almost describe it as like book porn, couldn't you? This is real book lovers' books. And if there's one subject that I absolutely love, it's books about books. Nice colour insert section here. It's brilliant, isn't it? Very, very nice. Of course, one of the top ones to get, and I wonder if we can, it may not be illustrated here. So I told you earlier on they did beautiful editions of Shakespeare. They did one of Shakespeare's As You Like It. And there's some early ones there. Yeah, they did Shakespeare's As You Like It. And it was illustrated by Salvador Dali, if you can believe it. And that's probably amongst of the early vintage Folio Society books, that's probably the one that's worth the most. I think you could pick up a copy for about £100 in a dust wrapper, because that's how it was issued. I haven't got one of those, sadly, but I've seen the pictures of it, and it is gorgeous. I'll give them that. Anyway, that's that one there. We'll just stick, because these do take up some room. Now, I wanted to mention about a series. Actually, that's not going to be any good. That's going to be too much in the way. So slide that back there. So I mentioned about Charles Dickens. Dickens is an author I really, really like. Now, I do have a set of Charles Dickens in hardback, which dates from, I think, 1880 or 1890. A beautiful set of the full works. However, I don't like reading them. They've got 2 books in one volume, and they're just not very nice to read in the hand. Now, I did a bit of research on Dickens in Folio Society, because what I don't want to do is double up on books, getting the same book more than once in Folio Society just because it was re-released. It's just not worth it. Now, they didn't, when they first printed Dickens, they didn't do the whole lot, which is in 1972. In the 80s, they did do the whole lot. And this series here, with like the green cloth spines, was the first time they ever did all of Dickens. They did it again later on with another series, which are quite nice. But I think, having looked at both, this is the ones that I like. Now, they were all reprinted. And this isn't the first one. They started in 1981, but it's an earlier. It's like the second or third for David Copperfield. It's the only one I've got. I have got Dombey and Son on the way. And the trick is trying to find them at a reasonable price, because this one here only cost me £5.99, which I was delighted with. Same with Dombey and Son. But some of the ones, like the Christmas books, for example, they're like £20, £30, and that's more than I want to pay. But I am going to sell my really vintage set, my Victorian set, because I'm not reading them. I'm going to put the money towards tracking down the replacements, because these are great. And if you've never read Dickens, he's the only classic author who, although I haven't read them all, I've read half of what he wrote, and he wrote a lot. And I just love them. And I approach them the same way that they were written back in the day, where he would release one chapter as a part. It was a part work, so he would release a chapter a month, and usually the chapters would end on a cliffhanger, and it's just a great way to read them. Now, this is a really nice example of the Folio Society, because it's got, that is perforated, so you could use that as a bookmark, because we saw one in one of the earlier books there. And this is an option to introduce a friend to the society, and you would get like a little benefit if you did that. But yeah, nice. Just the right balance of illustrations, a little introduction. You don't want the whole, every little aspect of the book analysed in detail. Lots of illustrations there, like must be like 40 for the book. And there we are. I think fantastic. Yeah. And as I said, that's the first. But this particular series was reprinted. So if you want to get them, and you want to get them in first prints, which I do, you need to make a note or ask the seller, if you're looking to buy them, are these the first prints? So on the shelf, I think they look very nice. The boxes, though, are very, very susceptible to splitting. This one's got a tiny split there, but nothing too serious. I'm going to be okay with that, you know. Right. But another huge book. This is another one which was given away as a freebie. So this is one of the ones, join the society, get this book for free. So it turned up in a job lot. There was a bit of damage on the front, which I was a bit annoyed about. So it's got some wear, sadly, on this one. But because it was one of the ones that was given free, I'm confident that I'm going to be getting probably multiple copies over the years in job lots, should I try and track track another one down. I don't think I'll need to track another one down. I think one will just come my way. But it is only the slipcase, because the book itself is absolutely fine. And this looks at Queen Victoria's, the life in 10 years between the two coronations, the two anniversaries rather of Queen Victoria. So it's like a 10-year period in British history. And really interesting, really interesting sort of book. Yeah, all different sorts of aspects. It was a very different time, wasn't it, indeed? But beautifully illustrated, as you can see. And as I said, the Folio Society did more and more of this sort of non-fiction stuff as time went on. Yeah, the Jubilee years. So it's 1887 to 1897. That was the period. And this chap here, Roger Hudson, he seemed to have done quite a bit of this sort of book for the Folio Society, these sort of compilation ones. So evidently he was like a Folio Society staffer or something like that, was working there at the time and was tasked with putting these sorts of books together. I believe it's the same guy behind this one, which once again is exactly the same. It's one of those ones that was, I believe, given away as a gift. This is one on London, Portrait of a City. This is, I would say, probably unread by the look of it. And I like books on old London, I really do. It's one of my favourite sorts of subjects when I look at history books. Obviously had a very, very rich history, so there's lots to see. Yeah, 1998. And yeah, Roger Hudson again identified as the author. So one of these books that you get a lot of book for your money, and it was used as an enticement to get you to stay with the society for a long period of time. So let me make a little bit of room here, because as you can imagine, all these books take up quite a bit of room. We'll have a look at this one here now. This is Eminent Victorians, and I believe this one is also a reprint, I think. I have been through and catalogued these now, and some of them were definitely reprints. A little bit of marking on the boards there, the cloth. Let's get in there, but not much. But yeah, I believe this was just a real second-hand one. Yeah, it's got £5.50 inside. But I don't think this is a particularly scarce one. Once again, whether it was one of the free books you could choose, I'm not sure. Doesn't appear to have been read, this particular copy, and it just looks at people who were, eminent Victorians. Simple as that. Yeah, first printed in 1967. This edition is from 1987, so much later than my regular period. And but once again, I don't think the original's too hard to find, and which is probably why it was reprinted, because it was evidently a popular sort of book. So this one's here on borrowed time. To be honest, that'll probably be moved on at some point. Okay, so we're in the home stretch now with like about half a dozen to go, and back to a nice, quite small one here, Mother Courage. Now, the slipcase is a bit on the dusty side here. Yeah, and to me, that appears to have had a little bit of amateur repair work done there just to keep it in one place. I don't think that came as part of the printed book, but you never know. And here we are, Mother Courage. Once again, really beautiful cloth. It feels fantastic in the hand. There's something about it, honestly, it's hard to describe. I do, however, feel that it needs to stand the rails here. It needs a tiny, dusting off. And then, where's my toothbrush? It's we are. Right, so it's had a price there, which appears to have been rubbed out at some point, and then a new price put in. And because it's done on the end papers, they've not done a very nice job of it. The end papers are pretty plain, which is not superb. 1965, so middle of the roadish time for Folio Society, Mother Courage. Yeah, that is what it is. Don't know a lot about this one. However, I do know that it's got that not very nice. You can see there's got a price in there. It looks like it's been rubbed out before, quite heavy-handedly. So I need to be careful here. I don't want to make it any worse, but I don't want to leave the £3.50 inside, which is what this one cost. There we are. We're doing a pretty good job there. In actual fact, I think it's like made the previous rubbing out a little bit better, a little bit cleaner. So not perfect, because they, you know, it's the sort of, this burgundy colour has, you know, it marks up quite easily, but you can see that looks much better than what it was. So yeah, gorgeous little book, but I don't know anything about it. I don't know any of the history of this sort of one. So that's where I need to refer to my copy of Folio 60, which is in the house. As I said, you're not missing anything by not seeing that most recent one, but I will showcase it as the ultimate bibliography in my proper video on the Folio Society, which will be on the main channel in about a month's time. Right, now this one here actually got a little split. Look at that. But it's there. I'm sort of tempted to put a bit of glue in that, you know. Let's see, what is it? The Life of Muhammad. That's got a sticker mark on there. Well, I wasn't expecting to do any gluing today, but I'm tempted to put a little run in there, you know. Let's see how easy that would be. Now, if it overloads, it doesn't matter, because we know it's going to dry completely clear. Yeah, I think we've probably saved that there, you know. Look at that. That's really nice. That's absolutely fine. We don't need any more than that on it. I'm very much of the opinion sometimes less is more. So that's a little running repair on that part of the box. The top here is also, I would call that mottled. The thing is, basically it's cardboard, and I can't put polish on it or anything like that. But the main thing is it's not dusty. It's not dusty at all. But the more I look at it, the more yeah, we can't touch it, unfortunately. But it's evidently been on the shelf on the dirty side there. You know, the trick would be to have it up that way around, wouldn't it? Also, the book has, look at the back cloth, which isn't quite as nice as some we've seen, and it's sunned, so that's caught some sun and it's faded the spine, and then onto the front again. So it's one of those ones. Once again, though, I think this is a reasonably common one. I think I've seen multiple copies of it, and once again, it turned up in a job lot, so I'm not too fussed about it. You know, I wouldn't have chosen to have bought this one, but since it's come my way as part of the collection, or a collection, I'm not going to turn it away. So what was the year? 1964, look at that. And it is a first print. Yeah, 1964. And when you think about it, 1964 is like, you know, 61 years old, and I'm there fanning around over that, complaining about it. I shouldn't really be such a fuss ass, should I? Right, next. Almayer's Folly, Joseph Conrad. Now, they've done quite a bit of Joseph Conrad, and, he's definitely an author I don't mind at all. This particular one I don't think is supremely difficult to get hold of, but I'm glad I've got it. It's a nice edition. That it looks like it's got a little bit of yellow, and see the nice grey board there, and the cloth is terrific, but it's got a slight hint of yellow, and I suspect that this was in a room which had someone who was a smoker over just a little bit of the time, and there's just got a little bit of smoke damage. Nothing we can do about it because it's cloth, but at the same time, that's what I suspect has happened. The cloth on this one is particularly pronounced. It's got real texture to it. I love it. I absolutely love it. Anyway, let's get that in there and then give it a proper brush. So it doesn't appear as if the top edges were stained. In a lot of cases they were, or if it is stained, but the stain is somehow gone. I think the stain was probably a brown colour, like these end papers, which are plain. Now that's got a little 11 down the bottom there. What that's doing there, I have no idea. Thankfully it's pencil, I believe. It's being quite stubborn. Well, it looked like pencil to me. Is it coming out? Yeah, it's coming out. How did that get down there? Maybe someone has read this and they were just looking to test a pencil or a pen or something like that. Well, we got it, but yeah, a very unusual spot to have that in. Yeah, we managed to flick over all the illustrations there. And this sort of style of illustration, these full page ones with like two colour, that's sort of typical of these sorts of books from the Folio Society from this period. Yeah, 1962, Clark Hutton. See, that to me is it's vintage Folio Society in a nutshell, and I really like them. I got to say, I really like them. All right, this next one's the last sort of sizable one we've got here. The Story of Saint Michel, Axel Munthe. It looks very, very dusty on the top there. Oh, and it's actually got a little £12 on the spine here, on the slipcase rather. I don't know if you can see it. It's just in there, so it does appear quite light. So I'm hoping it will just come off, but once again, why would you mark a slipcase like that? There must be a better way of doing it. Has that got that off? Yeah, I mean, it's got it off, but it's still there very faintly. Okay. I don't think we're going to get it off completely, but it's there. It is what it is. So, well, this is quite the tome. Once again, I would say look at the sort of the golden boards there, and then look at the spine where it's evidently faded. That has got clear sun damage to it, sadly. I love the green inside, and the texture of it's very nice. Not as good as that Joseph Conrad. That's really something, that one. But yeah, this is a non-fiction one. They turned up in a lot, so it wouldn't have been one that I would have chosen to buy. But the fact that it's come my way, I'm not complaining about it. First published 1929. This one actually much later than I thought, like 1991 for the Folio Society, and it is a first printing. There we are. It looks older, doesn't it? are. Is he going to go in? Well, it's quite a tight fit into the slipcase. There we are, got it. Okay. Well, we've only got 2 more, and they're both books in dust wrappers actually. So that was the last one in a slipcase. So let's just clear the decks here a bit. Right, so last 2 books. This one here, Bellamy, Guide to how do you pronounce his name? Maupassant. Is in a wrapper, but it's because it was from that period. But the wrapper, as you can see, it's really, really bad. It's been laminated, so the wrapper has been stuck down, and I don't think it came like that. I think the wrapper was just like a regular wrapper, like the Multi Flanders we saw earlier on. However, this one has been repaired. Now, from the outside, it doesn't look horrific, but it's not great. But it's not the end of the world, and there's nothing I can do to improve that wrapper whatsoever, really. I just don't think there is. Maybe I could put a bit of polish on it. I'm umming and ahhing, because the next one we've got is a glassine wrapper, which will also be polished. So I think we're going to do it, you know. So I've just put the book to one side for a minute. I've got my Mr. Sheen here, and what I'm going to do, it's not going to make wonders, but it's just going to make it feel a little bit cleaner. So I'm just going to put some, not onto the book itself, but onto my duster. We'll dab that in a bit, like so. And I'm just going to run it over the plastic here, because it'll be a bit of a surprise, but it'll be amazing how much dirt is going to come off this that we can't really see with the naked eye, or at least not until we get it really close. And I have done this before with books, and I think the next one as well is going to be even more pronounced with this treatment, where we just run the polish over it, the glassine dust wrapper. So that was just that little bit on the back, and look at that. Look at the muck that we've got off it. I thought that was going to be the case, you know. This front edge seemed worse. It just feels worse, the front jacket to it. Yeah, horrific. It's going on. I'm doing it. It's that bad. That is, but the thing is, as I said, it's been laminated. There's nothing we can do. We can't take the lamination off. So all we can do is clean what was being put on, and they didn't do a very good job. But I don't know when, if ever, I'll get another copy of this book, you know. So consequently, I have to just make it look as good as possible. And you can see the grime coming off it. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Look at that. Wow. Blimey, O'Reilly. You can see where I've worked it. My God. I mean, this is cleaning in the extreme, isn't it? But what a difference it's made. Massive. Compared to what it was like. But, you know, as I said, I may never find a copy without a wrapper, so look at it. Look at that. But look at what's left. So look at it again. I think there's just a little bit more down the bottom corner there. I'm shocked at how much dirt we've got off this. I'm absolutely shocked. But then again, I think the book is quite, well, it's an old one. It's a 60-year-old book. I mean, that does look much better than what it did. the same time, I don't think I've ever seen a book transformed like that. It's a shame that they got a hair underneath the laminate, which is really, look at that. I mean, I can't believe that. I cannot believe it. But there we are. Amazing. Looks much better now, doesn't it? Anyway, let's clean the actual book now, because I'm still in some sort of state of shock here. The dust wrapper is replicated on the actual boards here, and it has got a bit of spine roll, this one, so it's evidently been read a few times, which I'm not surprised, because it's a well-known author, and although it's not a book that I've read, I hear it's very good, this particular story. Right, ex-library, got £5 on the inside there, in quite distinct pencil, so we're going to need to get that off. There we go. That wasn't too much of a hardship. Well, I think we've definitely rescued this book from, you know, it really was in a state, wasn't it? And it's definitely a much better book now. Just sometimes you get a bit of dust in the rails, as they call it. Yeah, it's a typical sort of 60s release by the look of it, or 50s rather, late 50s release, this one. Yeah, interesting. It hasn't got a date on. Usually it says Folio Society with the date, but it hasn't in this particular case. So I can't remember exactly when it was released, but it was, you know, it was in the first 10 years. So I'd say mid-1950s, probably. So yeah, apart from a bit of spine roll, which over time, stored correctly, that will sort itself out. This one can go back into its rather horrible dust wrapper. Until a better one should come along, I suppose. But look at that. That really has come up not much cleaner than it was. Evidently well handled, that particular book. I almost thought it was an ex-library at one point, but that doesn't look like the end of the world now, to be honest. It's not great, it's not perfect, but it's not the end of the world. Right, we've got one more, which is a similar sort of story, really, because it's got a glassine wrapper. It's this one, Salambo. Now, these glassine wrappers are notorious. They just don't really seem to have survived at all. So I'm going to be super careful taking it off. But basically, look at the muck on it. Look at the muck and dirt on that. That's accumulated over the years. So let's just do the book first of all, so we get a bit of historical context on this one. So the spine has faded, sadly. That is unfortunate, but even with the dust wrapper on it, of course, the dust wrapper is clear. So it's not gonna help, is it? Lots of dust in this, as you might expect. Well, we've not really had a chance to talk about next week. It's going to be another Penguin video. Or is it? No, it's going to be Guild Services editions next week. Then it's a Penguin video, I believe. So look out for that one in 7 days. If you've enjoyed this folio look through, and it's been pretty good, I've got more to do, but I thought this was enough for today. So if you've enjoyed it, do please give it the thumbs up, of course, you know, because I like doing this sort of stuff. It's such a change from doing paperbacks, you know. there we are. Let's start looking inside here. So it's got £3 inside. £3, you say? Get that out of the way. I don't think that was too bad a price for such an early folio book. I think particularly for me, anything from the 40s, 50s or 60s is high on my agenda. They're the ones I do really like. Obviously all the modern stuff is beautiful. I'd love to have loads of that, but it's a little pricey. It's a little pricey. So yeah, this one's got the illustrations as well. Don't know what was Slamber. I don't know much about this one again. I do know it's a beautiful looking book. (1950), so quite early as well. Gustave Flaubert. Very nice, very nice. That's beautiful. So let's see what we can do with this glassine case then, dust wrapper, because it's just going to be. So I'm imagining that underneath it's all right. I think it's the outside that's where the that's where it's got really dirty, and we can clearly see. It was in red, but this has come off. It's got faded rather, and you can see some flecking at the top. So it's going to be the same as the last one, but we're going to need to tread a little bit carefully. So here we go. So I'll find a brand new fresh bit of cloth. I'm going to just spray a load on. And I think we can afford to be fairly liberal here. So let's just do this first edge. And I'm hoping it will come off quite easily, in actual fact. And by easily, I mean it'll be easy to see what we're cleaning, let's put it that way. Okay. Now, I'll tell you what this glassine reminds me of. It reminds me of Penguin used to do book covers for their Penguin books. And they were printed, they were coloured versions of this sort of material. And I've actually washed them in the sink, believe it or not, in like slightly soapy water. And that did the trick as well. I think this is a bit too delicate for that. Certainly the level of dirt coming off these is not the same as that last book we did. It's not in that league. As you can see, but still quite bad. And we will have to do the underneath by the look of it as well. Right, now the spine, I believe, is one of the worst bits of this book. So let's get the spine done. Yeah, that was where it's got an awful lot off the spine, and I suspect it's just been exposed a bit more. The top bit of the spine here is particularly bad though. Yeah, that was pretty, we got loads of dirt and muck off that one. So we'll try and do the back cover, and then we'll take a little recap of what it's looking like. What we don't want to be doing is rubbing dirt into dirt. if you know what I mean. Cleaning up the dirt with a dirty bit of the cloth. Yeah, see, the cover is not too bad compared to that spine. That was the really bad bit. So I saved the best cleaning bit to last, didn't I? Yeah, that wasn't too bad. And this inner spine here, I don't think is too bad either. But obviously we can see some marks, so I think that's underneath. Yeah, it's interesting, that spine has like clouded up a bit. I think it needs another bit of a clean. It's so bad. Basically, it hasn't cleaned it properly. It's just, you know, it's lifted it off, but it's still mucky, believe it or not. Yeah, okay. Let's wipe it in underneath as well. Get a completely clean bit of cloth, so we're not wiping in the dirt. But the inside was nowhere near as bad as the outside. Thankfully. It's definitely looking better, but there's like staining on it still. There's like, it must have just been so bad in those areas, you know? So I'm going to just go back over it a little bit further and let's see if we can get some of these, like, they're like tide lines. Very, very unusual. Let's see if they dig the tide lines out a bit. The only other way I know to sort this out is to put it in some hot soapy water, because it's just a bit of plastic, and that does tend to sort it, but I didn't really want to do that with this because it's so delicate. But if it's just in a bath of soapy hot water on its own, I might be able to do it, but I'd rather not. Yeah, so every time I do it, it's taking off more gunk. So it is just because it's so dirty. Basically 75 years of just wear and tear, you know. And they did a few books in these glassine wrappers, and I think they're all, if you find them in the wrappers, obviously that's, you know, very unusual. Particularly bad bit of marking here. Right, I think we're almost there. It's looking almost as good as I think we're ever going to get it. It's definitely clearer now. We can actually see right through it. We've got an awful lot of dirt off. I mean, when you look at it, I mean, just horrific amounts. It's just the spine was the worst bit of it, but that's only, I guess, to be expected. When we put the book back on now, I think it's going to look remarkably improved. There we are. Yes, massive improvement. I think you'll agree. Yeah, brilliant. I'm really pleased with how that one's come out. That's gorgeous. Anyway, thank you very much for watching today. It's been, I hope you found that really interesting. I definitely enjoyed myself, and I will definitely be doing more Folio Society books again. But if you've enjoyed this one, do please leave a comment. Do please make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you again in 7 days. Bye.